Okay, and welcome to Chapter 8. We're talking about deviance and social control. Okay, what is deviance? Deviance is behavior that violates significant social norms. We are not talking about something really small. We are not talking about perhaps eating a pizza with a fork and knife. These are things that usually amount to laws, or it's something that would anger a significant amount of people if you did it. Okay, so in your own mind, number one, can you come up with 5 deviant acts? Anything from me thinking, stealing, cheating, stuff like that. So, with your own head, what are some deviant acts you might be able to think of? One thing you have to think of too is when someone does it, it may not be a deviant act. So when a police officer kills someone, is that considered a deviant act? Murder definitely is considered a deviant act. But when someone in particular murders, is it murder anymore? Is it just part of their job? If we came to a police officer in the street and they had killed someone on the job, do we look at them the same way we look at anyone else who had killed someone? Okay? And then some things that we have to also look at, does doing a deviant act make you a deviant in yourself? So, for example, does one speeding ticket make you a speeding deviant? Are you someone that is breaking the law enough that you are to be considered a deviant? People might call it a bad person, but that's not always the case. You can be a deviant that honestly is going against something that is very cruel in society, and maybe you're being a good person. But does one speeding ticket define you? Does smoking marijuana as a college student define you, like maybe a Barack Obama did? Or are you more defined by other parts of your life? Labeling. To be labeled a deviant, you have to have these things. First, you have to be caught in the act. Many deviant acts can be hidden if the deviant is smart. Obviously, there are many kids in this state and in this country that drink or do something illegal before they turn of the proper age. However, some people get caught and are considered to be bad kids. Some kids get away with it. Many of you know that there are many multitudes of things that people get away with. Some people get caught and they're criminals. Some people never get caught and they're not criminals. They did the same thing, but it's just whether or not you got caught. Second is stigmatization. Stigma is a social disgrace, so it's the difference of being, let's say, you and a person are both known to be a drunk. However, they may be someone who drove while drunk and caused an accident that hurt people or killed someone. They're going to have far much more social stigma than you, who might be a person that just can't handle their own impulse control. It can even sometimes in the past be marked on the body. So in Japanese culture, tattooing was known to be part of the mafia or the yakuza. So actually back in their culture, if you had a mark on you, it was very obvious that you were a bad person. But in most modern cultures today, tattooing doesn't hold that deviancy, though some people do view tattooing as itself a deviant act. There is usually some sort of social punishment for stigma. So if someone, for example, had been considered to cheat on a boyfriend or girlfriend, and you're in the high school setting, that person may get a stigma of being a cheater, and no one will ever go out with them again. So why do we do this? There's a few reasons. Number one is unifying your group to create a them. So you might only have a group because you guys don't do something. So if you're a group of friends that hate smoking, you have a stigma against smokers. Anyone you know to be a smoker is someone you don't want to deal with, or drinking, or whatever sort of thing you can think of. Another reason we have deviancy, it allows rebellion from the typical. Everyone is a deviant in one way or another. Now, not all of them get punished, and not everybody gets caught, but no one is perfectly average, or you'd be the most boring individual in all of human history. It also allows some rebellion, so you know what is different. Okay? You are allowed to be not happy with your government in this country without being called a deviant. However, if you're someone that blew something up and caused death and murder, that would be considered a deviancy because now you're very much out of the typical. Okay? It helps you to participate in social change. So if you look at the South, and this is an example that I was able to find, of course you have the black woman at the table. Look at all these white men and a few white women, but they're all there to harass the people at the counter. Black people aren't allowed at the counter, so this white guy and I believe it's another white woman, they sat there, they would refuse to move. They have poured sugar packets, water, coffee, more sugar on the hair. They're considered deviants. They are standing out from the typical culture. Now today, it would not be these people that would be considered deviant. They're just having, it says like they have donuts there. You are having breakfast. These people are deviant because they're being very mean. Okay? Jobs are also created to control deviancy, and we actually see this as a big problem in our country where we have the highest incarceration rate of any country on earth. We put more people in jail than North Korea does, and some dictatorships do. And that's because we have so many laws and so many ways that you can be considered a deviant in this country. You need cops and you need jail workers. And some states, if they open a lot of jails, will create new laws to get people into those jails. I believe a lot of studies have been done that if we had decriminalized marijuana throughout the entire country, we might actually put thousands of people out of work because there'd be so many less people in the jails. Okay, functionalism. Everything has a purpose or function. Same thing we talked about in psychology. So deviancy has its own function. A deviant is put under the strain of society and its goals. So the deviant doesn't want to do what society is telling them to do. Doesn't mean society's right, but they don't want to do it. So if someone is trying to force you to make bad decisions, and it's what most of the kids are doing, well then you're a deviant because you did the right decision. So it can be either way. A deviancy is when a person finds these goals of societies to be impossible to achieve or they're irrelevant to achieve. You'll find many women nowadays don't feel a need that they have to get married in their 20s, even though it's still fairly common. Now, that's not considered much of a deviant act compared to what it used to be when women were getting married at age 19. Okay. You will also find, for an example that I gave, if you're refused a job due to your nationality, you must work under the table for people to hire you. So if you are an illegal Mexican immigrant, it is not a deviant act to work. But if you're not someone who's supposed to be here, you then have to become a deviant and a criminal if you want to work. So you're going to have to work under the table. They'll pay you cash, but it's actually illegal to pay you because you're not allowed to be in this country. Then for a second example, you might think of yourself as someone who does not care because no one has contacted you in a couple of months. You are someone who's moved to a new town, so you feel that you can drink, have drugs, do as much sex as you want because nobody cares, and you can be a deviant as much as you want. But if you get into certain circles where that is the norm, then you're no longer a deviant. So we do find some people are just deviants just because they want to be different, and they can't stand to be typical. Those who are not deviant, it's called conforming to your society. So you will find people on the reverse who like to be conformists. They want to be as average as possible. They don't want to stick out, and they want to have that feeling that, hey, I'm not one of the bad guys. I'm one of the people that are part of the good part of society. They're more likely to be treated fairly in society and believe conforming to societal expectations is reasonable. People that tend to be treated fairly tend to conform to societal expectations. It just makes sense. If I am someone who is privileged in this country, so you could say if you're a white, male, heterosexual, they don't really care about the rules because the rules have always been for them. But if you're not white, if you're a woman, if you are gay or whatever, you might have more of a reason to be a deviant because the rules don't help you. The rules are against you, something like that. Driving safely may be slower, but you might accept it that you should drive safely so that everyone can be safe. Now, you will find some people who are horrible drivers, and they do not care about other people's safety. But you'll find a lot of people that they may speed the extra 5 to 10 miles an hour on a country road, but when they get behind someone who is going 5 miles under the speed limit, they will stay under the speed limit because they know it's not safe to pass them. Okay. Another thing is conflict theory. Both the powerful and the deviants commit deviant acts. So it's just the conflict between those two groups of people on who are the deviants and who are the powerful. The powerful people often tend to get away with their deviant acts, or their deviant acts gained them their power. So, for example, especially like cocaine in this country, richer people tend to do powder cocaine, poor people tend to do crack cocaine. Powdered cocaine did not have the same sentence of jail time as crack cocaine. I believe at one point it was 5 to 10 times more of a sentence in jail, like 5 to 10 times more time in jail just for doing crack cocaine, even though it's the same drug chemically. The richer people tend to do powder cocaine, so they actually got less jail time for doing something that they already did. And then sometimes deviant acts also get you into power. So someone who might steal or murder or sell drugs might get them into so much power that they can never be caught again, that they are untouchable. Deviants are those often who disobey the rules of the powerful people to obtain, or they do it to obtain rewards. So people who are deviant are just disobeying the rules of the powerful people, or they're doing it to obtain rewards that they cannot get doing it the right way. So you might have some people who they aren't very smart, they didn't get a good education, their public schools or whatever school they had failed them, and they want to make a lot of money like every American. Well, they can't make it making a 9-to-5 job where they're getting minimum wage. They have to maybe sell drugs on the side or have some sort of hustle that gives them a lot of money really quick, but that might make them a deviant because it's no longer legal. An interactionist theory is the reason why we conform is so that we can successfully interact with others. If we have few social connections, we're more likely to be deviant. Success breeds success, and failure breeds failure, in a sense. If you feel like you are someone who cannot connect with others, you really don't care what other people think, you're more likely to do deviant acts. If you are someone who gets along with others, you tend to try to do stuff that makes them happy, and then usually that also helps you interact better with them when you're making them happy. There's also a thing called techniques of neutralization. So you might suspend your own moral beliefs to commit deviant acts. That's when you know it is wrong, but you choose to do it anyway. It's just like a mortal sin in religion class. You know it's wrong, but you're going to do it anyway. So an idea of this might be, let's be honest, like with the corona stuff going on, you may be a good human being who's never committed a crime, but let's be honest, if there's not food on the shelves, you're more willing to do something stupid to get food for your family. Now, you might be doing it for good reason, but you are probably going to shut down your emotions of, I know this is stealing, and you're just going to take it. Okay, you have other 5 techniques that you have are denying responsibility. So these are people that, oh, it wasn't my fault that I did this or that. It was someone else's fault, or it's your fault because you put me in this situation. Another thing, so this is what you'll hear a lot from criminals that try to say they're not bad people. Denying injury, that what they did didn't actually mean anything. So if I stole money from a rich person, that doesn't mean anything because they're going to be fine. Why would that matter? Or you might say that you might have punched someone, but, oh, I didn't mean to do it, or, oh, you only bruised your shoulder, or it didn't hurt you that bad. You might deny the victim. You might say that the victim themselves is not worth caring about. If they're from a group that people dislike, then you may try to use that against them. You'll also see people too that will attack credibility. So you're saying that person lies a lot, but you only attack them because you know you could have gotten away with it. You could condemn authorities. So you could say that the laws are mean or bad. And then you could also appeal to higher loyalties. So you will have some people in countries where they break the law. They're doing it because of their religion, or they're doing it because of their race or ethnicity, where I don't care about the rules of my country because I know that I have a better rule over here that tells me to do something. We have degradation ceremonies. So you may have an actual ceremony where you are labeled a deviant, whether this be a criminal trial, or someone is Facebook shaming you, or maybe you're at a high school and someone reveals your deep dark secret. There might be a point in your life where you remember very vividly, this is where I felt like an outcast. Could be court, if you're criminal, could be anywhere. For example, if you got a different girl pregnant than your current wife, you are considered to be a cheating monster. The ceremony that came with that would be possibly your wife, or maybe girlfriend if you were not in a committed relationship, smacking you in public and calling you a cheating monster. Okay, so we move on to crime. Any behavior that's prohibited by law and punishment, and is punishable by the law. You'll find a crime chart on page 187. I highly suggest looking into that. Gives you some good stats. You also have any type of crime you want is on page 188. You have things called white-collar crimes. It's crimes inside of a profession, usually done by the rich and successful people in this country. These are like accounting frauds. So I take $400 from the accounting fund and I take it out and I put it in my own pocket. That's white-collar crime. Usually you have to be in a business to commit a white-collar crime. Insider trading is one. So I actually just saw this a few days ago. As of March 22nd, so it's probably about March 20th, 2020, there's a few Congress people that were told how bad the stock market could be getting, and they immediately did some stock trading after that meeting. That could be considered a crime because they had information that the public didn't have. Martha Stewart, the famous dietitian and homemaker, she got in trouble for insider trading and went to jail. A crime syndicate is a group that organizes crimes to make money. They are a crime business. So as a crime business, they decide we are going to sell drugs, cheat in gambling, do anything you want. So the biggest example, you all should know this by now, a crime syndicate like the mob or the gangs. If you ever watched the movie The Godfather, it's an organized group. It's basically a business, and it does horrible things, or things that the government doesn't allow you to do. This is a chart, and hopefully you can see my mouse, of incarcerated Americans from 1920 to 2014. And you can see around 1980, we really start to see something change. Because it had been going up and up, which only makes sense because we're getting more people in this country, but then it goes all the way up. Well, we get to the 1980s, and some of it was because of the 1970s, we get what we call the war on drugs. So we start sending anyone to prison who does any amount of drugs, and we're not sending you to mental health or anything, we're just sending you to jail because you're a horrible, horrible person. So you get marijuana, cocaine, whatever, and it goes up, 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 up. And then we get to around 2008-ish, well, you get a certain Barack Obama, other people that get to the population of, hey, they actually did some drugs when they were in college, and they don't mind telling people that. And they say, hey, we shouldn't send people to jail for something that is just as dangerous as alcohol, or maybe even slightly less dangerous than alcohol in certain situations. So you will actually see that nowadays we are maybe trying to lower the amount of people in jail. We have more people in jail than live in Nebraska in this country. Okay, police. Police discretion is where police choose to who they will arrest and charge with crimes. Okay, so this can be good because sometimes they make good decisions, but sometimes they make terrible decisions. So you will get, many people get off with a warning. So in this country, this is meant to be a joke about how we are treated in this country, but some cops, if you're in bad parts of the country, if you are considered to be white, you're going to be let off with a warning. If you are a darker person, you may be arrested for something, even if you're doing the same exact thing. Many people can get off with warnings if they know the cops. There has been some preference for women if they're pulled over for driving. and they may not be arrested or even given anything other than a warning. I feel lucky as myself, Mr. Pierce, that I've been pulled over twice, given a warning each time. And it was just something where they assumed, hey, we know you know what you're doing. And yes, it wasn't something big. It was taillights not being on, or my front lights not being on, or I didn't know how the stop sign worked in a really weird small town. But they let you go. You go to some other towns, and if you don't look like you're from the community, they may not want to deal with you, and they might arrest you, or they might give you a fine. So mostly the whole racial profiling idea is that there's a bias, whether they know it or not, that cops are more likely to arrest minorities than white people. It is still a thing in this country. It is still done everywhere in this country. Some places are not nearly as bad as others. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to talk about is plea bargains. So a plea bargain is where the defendant, or the person charged with the crime, is willing to plead guilty so they can receive a lighter than expected penalty. So the person might say, hey, you're going to go to jail for 5 years if we catch you being guilty. But they will say, hey, if you don't go to trial, we'll only arrest you for 1 year. And there's a reason why in this country, compared to every other country on earth, 90% of all of our cases never go to court. It is bargained for a lower penalty. That is something in this country where we send too many people to jail, but to get through all these trials, we have to cut them short and just say, hey, if you think you did this, we're going to give you this amount of time. But if you make us waste time on this, then your punishment will be the normal punishment. The bad thing about plea bargains, too, is some people are threatened with 30, 20 years in prison, and they see a 2-year prison sentence as acceptable even when they didn't even do anything. Because if they are found to be guilty in a trial, they're gone for almost the entirety of their lives. So you can also find some bad parts where people take plea deals when they are actually innocent.